Hey guys, this is Shane and welcome to my Curator of the Lost channel. And today I'm going to talk about how to find and then identify and recognize books for resale. If you want to be an online bookseller, whether that's for a hobby, a side gig, or whatever you're trying to do, whether it's supplement your income or just for fun. First off, how do you find books for resale? And then once you find a source, how do you recognize the ones that are going to be profitable and things that you need to put in your bag and pay for and then make a good profit on? So we'll concentrate on two things. We're going to concentrate first on a little bit on sourcing, which for somebody that's just starting out, hopefully will be some good information, and then talk about when you're looking at these shelves, when you're looking at lots of books, do not get sensory overload, how you can find things that'll work for you. So hey, welcome, subscribe. Give me some comments. Look forward to what you might have to say about this, and hopefully it'll help. So with that, let's just jump straight in. So for somebody that's been selling, or this may seem obvious of where you source your materials, but for somebody that's just starting out, where do you find books for resale? Well, for me, I have three major areas. There's others, but for three major areas, and I've got an inventory that I've built up over the years of. I generally have 400 to 500 books for sale. But my three major areas for sourcing are, first, it's the library bookstores. Libraries have friends of the library organizations, and they often run dedicated bookstores. Sometimes they just might be a few shelves in the library itself. Sometimes these have huge rooms that they have books that are all the time. Sometimes they're open all the time. Sometimes just certain days of the week. And then these libraries also have periodically they will have book sales. Like our library system typically will have a spring sale and a fall sale where they do a 25-cent sale. Everything in the sale is 25 cents. So first off, get in touch with your local libraries. Usually every library in your town has its own friends organization or friends bookstore. So get in tune with your local libraries and see what kind of stores and sales they have. Not only do you find good deals, but it puts money back into your library system. So it's a win-win situation. There is a app. There's a book sale finder if you're traveling or you're looking too, that you can look at. And a lot of times it'll list. If you look at book sale finder or on their website, you can also look and find a lot of libraries. That comes in handy if you're traveling and not in your hometown. All right, so number two, it's the obvious one. We all do it. Thrift stores. The thing about thrift stores, some thrift stores are great for books. Some have no books and they're like all clothes or houseware. So you got to find the thrift stores that work for you, that have a good book selection, good space for books. I go to some places and thrift stores are $2.99, a book. That puts a lot of pressure on if you're trying to resell books that are like $8, $9, $10 books. I'm lucky in my area. A lot of these books at thrift stores I'm getting for 50 cents or $1. So depending on what part of the country you're in, your thrift stores, not only the availability of books, but the price of the books will hurt you on that front. The third big area I use are estate sales, and an app that's become increasingly useful is the estatesales.net. You can see the estate sales that are going on in your area, and they give a lot of photographs, so you can see if that sale has a lot of books. Those are my three big ones. I don't really do yard sales. I think they're hit or miss. I guess if hey, if one presents itself, that's great, but if it doesn't, whatever. So those are my big three sources. All right. Libraries, get in touch with your library for their bookstores and their sales, your estate sales, and of course your thrift stores, and make sure you find thrift stores that work for you. All right, so let's move on now. You found a good source. You found lots of books. There's shelves, boxes, whatever. How do you identify which books to do? Some people will use a scan pal, or they'll just go through and they have the time. They can scan every single book. I don't do that. I've never done that. I kind of look at the books. I have a feel for it. I pull the things that I want, and I'll do my comps on eBay or Amazon from that using my smartphone. So I might miss some things that somebody that's going through that's just scanning them, but for the person that's just starting, they probably are not going to want to do a scan pal or to do that. So arm yourself with knowledge, the types of things that work, and you can narrow your focus, get some good finds, and make profit off of them. So my number one piece of advice on that front, here it is: nonfiction books. Go to the nonfiction sections. The fictions, your John Grishams, your James Patterson, your popular fiction, you can make money there, but it's thin margin, and those things that millions of them. People are gonna, if they resell those, they're making 50 cents, or if they sell at all, because there's a million copies of them. Go to the nonfiction, the special interests. These are things that are going to cover genres like animals, art, music, sports, crafts, hobbies, history. These are the types of things, cars, transportation. These are the types of things that you'll be able to make good money on. If you do fiction, I think that you have to know, there's key things like early Stephen King, or some key books to be on the lookout for that you can make great money on. But for me, I first go to nonfiction. That's my number one piece of advice for you to identify and recognize books. Go to the nonfiction section. I also concentrate primarily on hardbacks. I do find a lot of paperbacks, but I'll look first at hardbacks. If I do paperbacks, I will do things that are nonfiction. Something like, here's a paperback, on martial arts of breaking, or a vintage pogo. This is a comic, from this Walt Kelly, or some history type things, with this, someone wrote a book on what George's Lake Seminole. These are the types of nonfiction things that I would look at in the paperback sections as well. But I would concentrate on hardbacks. The next piece of advice, when you're scanning the shelves, look for small publishers. Your big Random Houses, Viking, Putnam and Sons. There's good books there, don't get me wrong. But if I'm scanning and I go across, look at these. These are small publishers. There's Texas A&M. These are all small publishers. Sometimes I will look at the publisher before I even see the title, and it'll clue me in on, hey, I want to pull this one and do a comp on it, and it's worth my time to do the comp. You can see it. Look for things like this: strange or weird or small publishers. It'll serve you well. The next one, and it's kind of, I'll lead into some examples, is know your genres, know the types of things that work. And so let's just go through some of these things on the genre. Again, people that are doing Scan Pals or scanning every book, they don't care. They're going to set a price point and go through it. And while that's personally not the way I do it, if that's what you do and it works for you, and I have nothing against it, it works for people. That's why people use it, right? Because they're not going to miss anything. They're going to go through. But it does take time. You do have to pay for the services or whatever. So for me, I kind of the art of it, you kind of just look at your genres and go from there. And so here's some examples. So let's think about animals. Good genre. Here's an example of something I would do, on dog retrieving. Great example. Or here's like horses, on horseshoeing. And another horse one I happen to have that's in my store now, this Stud Manager's Handbook, another horse equestrian theme. These would be examples of things in the animal genre that I would do. Different stores will have different things organized differently. Sometimes they'll be separated by genre. Sometimes they're all mixed up. So who knows how it's gonna work out for you. But if you have an eye for this, then you can start to zero in on these things that will work for you. And that's really what a lot of my other videos, when I'm showing you things, it's really just to give you examples of genres and things to look out for, the style of books to look out for. Another thing I sell a lot of are history related books. Like here's one on Sam Grant. This is a good example of history. Now here's another history, like in genealogy. It's history and genealogy of pioneer families from North Alabama. Type of thing I would look out for and buy anytime I see it. Along the history front, you can get into some of the special interest. Like here's the story of the Trenton Lodge. It's a Freemasonry. It's a book on Freemasons in Grundy County, Missouri. See something like this, I'm gonna pick it up. Find this stuff for like $1 all day long. Another special interest type thing would be, here's Bridge World Championship records books. I bought a whole stack of these for like a couple bucks each. They sold, you know, 20, 30 bucks a piece. Great books. Technology or science. Now you can spend a lot of time in these areas, and sometimes, you know, science books can get dated and they don't sell very well, but you know, you just have to have a flavor for it. If you come from a technical background, engineering or physicist or something like that, it's going to help you. Mathematics, it'll help. One thing I'll do look at, if I pop open especially older science books that may be dated, but if it's something from somebody that's an MIT or Caltech or Stanford or Georgia Tech, any of those really great institutions, even though it's old, you can almost guarantee that it still sells well and has good value. It might not bring 200 bucks like the latest edition, but it might still bring 40 or 50 bucks. So look out for things from those schools, but or authors that are associated with those schools. But some examples of science, I would pick up something like Smart Antennas. Great find, a couple bucks for that one. Mathematics, here's some stuff on Hilbert transforms. Good, you got this in a estate sale for $1. Maybe, you know, it's not the hard sciences as they would say, but here's, and I mean that facetiously, you know, biochemistry and physiology of the lemon, right? Got this in California, great book. It's a great $50, $60 book. Good examples of science. All right, another genre that I would look for would be hobbies and crafts, like how to repair wicker furniture. Got this for $1 at an estate sale. It's a good book. It'll sell. Hadn't sold yet. That is a note on some of the stuff as a bookseller too. You're going to have thin markets. Sometimes these books may sit on your shelf in your inventory for a month, 3 months, 6 months, and then that right buyer is going to come along and they're going to buy it. So a lot of times in this nonfiction, you're not going to like, there are books you'll list and they'll sell immediately, but sometimes it's a thin market, and you know, there's just not a million people out there looking for a book on Hilbert transforms or the biochemistry of the lemon. So you just have to wait until the right person comes along. All right, so another genre, art and music. So like, here's a good example of art. You know, nice photography. I typically stay away from all the coffee table books and all of that. The ones that are hard to ship because they're really oversized and they just don't bring that much. A lot of times stores want $5, $10 for these big books, and they're not worth $5 or $10. So, but specialty stuff like this photographer, or guitar tab books. Like here's a blues tablature. It's also got a you know, the CD was intact. Or sometimes artists, like here's Jack Johnson. Love me some Jack Johnson. But like for the album On and On, it's the songs and the tablature, the guitar tablature for this song. I have really good success with these. You know, they'll sell, you know, sometimes 10, 15, 20 bucks, and you can get them a lot of times for $1 or less. So that's another good find. Another genre, sports. Seems obvious, but sometimes certain teams, like here's Ohio Buckeyes. I find a lot of stuff around town here in Alabama, of course, on the Crimson Tide, on the Tide, baby, Roll Tide. And they sell really well. It's good stuff when you can find it. But here was like a nice rugby book. This one's one I find I have in my store now. Type of subject matter I'd find. Then one of the last ones I'll talk about. Got a couple more genres. One is games. Like a lot of times I'll find stuff for Warhammer. I've got some really good Warhammer stuff right now. Even the old stuff, the dated stuff, people will collect this. Get it cheap enough, sells. So look for games. Then cars and transportation, like railroad. Here's some railroad, and you know it's got a small publisher. Something on a Ducati motorcycle. This is actually like the user manual, or that comes with the Ducati. Car suspension and handling. Those are great examples. There was even like an automotive auction where they talked about all the cars as photos and values they expected from those. Great subject material. Automobiles, cars, transportation sells really well. I will make, so that's all the nonfiction genres. I will make one final thing for fiction. I always, because I'm a science fiction guy, I always look for science fiction stuff. And, you know, I find a lot of these Doubleday, a lot of times it's 2-in-1, 3-in-1. They were like science fiction club books. Like here's Asimov on The Rest of Robots. Great cover, vintage book, but it's got like 3 of the books in it. Whenever I see these, you can get them for $1. There's some of these Doubleday science fictions that sell really well. I also mentioned vintage Stephen King. You know, if you find Cujo, The Shining, some of those on the early editions, even if they're book club editions, they sell really well for fiction. But sci-fi, if I can find a stack of the old Dahl, these are the great, you know, great vintage sci-fi, and they always have great covers. And sometimes you can find these for, you know, in lots or boxes for the right price. I snag those, and then anytime I find, of course, like old Ace doubles, these, you know, look, man, these have the old Ed M. Schweiler or Ed Vergursky's cover art. I mean, you can't. I mean, the cover art by itself is a thing of beauty, but I always look out for, you know, for the Ace doubles. So, as well as other science fiction. Whenever I see science fiction, I know science fiction, I'll find it. So, that's lots of examples for genres. So, that's it. That's all I've got. So, mainly sourcing, recap, libraries, bookstores, and sales. Find your thrift stores that work for you, and look at that estate sales.net to find the estate sales that have good books. Save you a lot of time. You can find a lot of stuff there. Then when you find that place and you're overwhelmed with books, what do? First thing you do is you think nonfiction hardbacks. Then I'm also going to look at small publishers on the spine, and finally I'm going to remember my genres, and that's what I'm going to take my knowledge and apply things that I've sold, videos I've watched, and get my books to hone me in so I can get those big winners. Get them in my store and make some good profit. So find some treasure, be a curator of the lost. So that's it. I hope you enjoyed it. Hope it was helpful. Again, subscribe, and look forward to comments, and find that treasure, and like me, get addicted to it, kind of the thrill of the hunt, being a curator of the lost. And that's it. We'll talk to you next time. Bye.